Hey there, it's Kate Swoboda, also known as Kate Courageous. I'm the creator of YourCourageousLife.com, the director of the Courageous Living Coach certification at TeamCLCC.com, and author of the book, The Courage Habit. In my continuing quest as a multi-potentialite, I also talk about teaching the teachers over at Facilitate with Impact. And now I'm the host of a new podcast, the Your Courageous Life podcast. We're going to talk about going after what you want and living a more courageous, emotionally resilient life. I might drop a couple of F-bombs, so don't listen with your kids in the back seat. And here we go. All right, I've got a great topic for today's podcast. It's going to be all about practicing courage with money. Before I get into that, I just wanted to say a little thank you to those of you who have been leaving iTunes reviews. I know. Like everybody who has a podcast says, please leave a review and thank you for leaving a review and all that good stuff. And it's because when you leave reviews, more people can learn about what we're up to. And so we're just incredibly grateful. And I like to give shout outs, especially when people leave comments, and just want to say thank you to somebody with the username Knit Girl. I presume that you like to knit. Thank you for leaving a review and some comments. It's so helpful. Tons of gratitude. All right, let's talk today about courage with your money, with your dollars. Or, of course, since not everybody is in America, since the United States is actually not the center of the universe, your pesos, your Canadian dollars, your pounds, your euros, whatever your form of currency is. Let's talk about it. Because whenever you're going after something that you want in your life, there's this very real fact. The amount of money that you have and the access to resources that you have is going to correlate on some level with what you are able to do. Now, there are coaches who would jump all over my ass for saying that. They'd be like, that's not the case. Your mindset can transcend everything. And then there are people who would say coaches who take that view are not really actually bringing to the forefront of these discussions the very real reality that there are people who don't have access to resources. And I like to take a very nuanced view. And the nuanced view is, first of all, if you're not doing anything right now in your life to try to level the playing field, to make sure that there's equal access to resources, to help the people who have been denied resources for a long time to get a leg up, what are you doing? Right? Like, we're in this human community. Let's all come together because no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. And there are a ton of little things that you can do. And even if you don't feel like you have a lot of money to give, is there some way that you can give time, tutoring, a ride to work, something? Is there something that you have to give that would really help someone else's life? So I don't like the idea that coaching gets so aligned with just think positive, be positive, love and light, and everything's going to be okay. That's not how I practice as a coach. I've been a coach for more than a decade. It's not really ever how I've practiced as a coach. And it's not that looking to the positive or being optimistic is bad for you. To the contrary, there's ample research that the more you can put a positive spin on something, the more it is actually good for your psychological health. But it's more so, let's not deny the fact that there are people who have a real lack of access to resources, and that we all bear some responsibility for how to correct that, for how to make the world better. And then on the other side of things, there's, if you are into the, the love and the light and everything, I'm not saying that you're bad or wrong out of the gate either. It's a very helpful attitude to take on. And I definitely know that there have been times in my own life when I was experiencing symptoms of clinical depression, or times when I was just really at a kind of bottoming out place where I needed to go, look, the thing I got to hold on to today is I can do it no matter what. And yeah, that's a pithy affirmation, but man, I'm like just holding on today. And that's what I need to do that. So I try to keep it really real about how both of these ideas need to be weighed and need to be looked at. Both the idea that there are people who have very real money problems or lack of access to resources, and we need to work on that. And the more that one can attune themselves to a more optimistic viewpoint to the degree that they can, the more emotionally stable, the more resilient, the more effective, the more on and on and on the research indicates you can be. So very pragmatic on that. Now, here's the thing, though, that I really want to talk about in today's podcast episode, because this podcast episode is really going to be focused for those of you who are listening who know that you have, well, maybe a couple people. First of all, if you know that you have some money issues that you'd like to work on. Also, and by money issues, I mean like emotional money issues. Also, it's for those of you who have noticed that even though you have money and you have and you have access to resources, you still really struggle around something money related. Or money becomes the reason not to do something that you would like to do in your life. Maybe you feel really stuck around it. Maybe you feel like you're not really sure what you could do that would change. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So first of all, and this feels still even just a little bit, just a little bit weird to say, I want money. I like money. I like having more money. And I don't really like it when I have less money, and I like buying stuff. It feels a little weird to say because historically I've had a couple issues with it, but I'm leading off today's podcast by just saying that because there was a time in my life when I was very big on trying to be above it with the money. So I used to like smile, and just, well, there's more to life than money. That's where my focus is. And it's not about the stuff, and it's not about, how much money you have. It's like finally getting to this point of going, well, of course there's more to life than money. Of course there's more to life than money, but that doesn't mean that, all right, like, just get honest. I like having money. And I'm certainly not a 1%er. But I like it when I can pay my bills. I like it when I can live in the house that I want to live in. I like it when I can walk into a store and get the things that I need. I like it when I can get more than I need. I like it when I have money left over. I like it when my business is prosperous. I like it. And so, of course, there's more to life than money. And it is also true that you can like your stuff. And I say this in part for those people, and you know who you are, wherever you are, who are the people who like to say, I like money and I want to use the money that comes into my life to buy the stuff. Immediately you get hit with this like, oh, but I don't want to be one of those materialistic people where the only thing that ever matters is money and buying stuff and there's no substance. I like, again, nuance. You can do both. You can have money, you can have plenty of it in your life, and it doesn't mean they're automatically a person of no substance. What I eventually came to realize about that way of being with money, by the way, is that the person who really plays it cool around money is not necessarily living a bigger or a bolder life than the person who's just like, I love money. The person who, and I've been this person, like I said, the person who is playing it cool around money, here's what was going on for me and what I've seen go on for other people. When they're playing it cool, sometimes it's because they think money is bad. There's this like capital S story, an internalized narrative. Money is bad, money is bad, money is bad, money is bad. It's like, and that's the real crux of the suffering. So if you want to practice courage with money, if you want to actually get into what it is that you do with money that is not working in your life, whether it's strictly strategic and it's about budgeting and counting all of your beans, or if it is about something else, something emotional, you got to look at your stories. So how do you do that? How do you get some power over your money stories? Well, to get familiar with the concept of money stories or any other kind of capital S story, which is an internalized narrative, highly suggest you grab The Courage Habit, which is my book. And yes, I am suggesting that you grab my own book. And if you don't want to grab my book, you could grab a different book like Barry Tesler's The Art of Money. But really, I'm saying grab any book that's going to get into stories. And I know that my book, The Courage Habit, does get into stories, these capital S stories that we carry about anything in our lives and that we particularly apply to money. So here's an example, and stories are those assumed beliefs that become habits or default ways of being. So, you can have, and they're not good or bad, they just are. You can have a story that people are fundamentally selfish and out for themselves. And that's a story that is going to color what you believe and how you respond and how you behave. And it's probably not going to feel very good. And you can have a story that people are fundamentally good. And that's going to color what you believe and how you think and how you behave. So if you want to have power over your money story, look at your stories and see how they become the fuel for judgment. So for instance, let's go with what's too much money. That they have too much money. And I used to have a real story about people who I thought had too much money. Like people like Paris Hilton. I'm like, oh, she's bad. She has too much money. And, this is a judgment. It causes me to separate from another human being. The fact is, I don't really know her. The most I know is what's reported in tabloid news that I haven't even paid attention to for years. And really, I think if we go with this idea of how we view the world and what feels good and what doesn't, and how stories can influence that, if I carry a story that people who have more money are bad, that they have too much or more than they deserve, then how comfortable am I ever going to be making more money myself? This concept of too much money is completely relative. Somebody could say that I have too much money if I make six figures, and somebody could say I have too much money if I make 50K, and somebody could say I have too much money if I make $1 million. And it's all about a conception of what too much officially is. But what I'm trying to drill down into is this idea that if you carry a certain story about people with money, so this is a good check for you to do, then how does that influence your life? And another thing I noticed when I think about that story is that it's not my business how she or anybody else spends their money. And it sure as hell is my business how much compassion, acceptance, and love I have for another human being. Now, if she's funding a political candidate that I don't like, that becomes my business. That actually influences me. But when she spends whatever she spends on a pair of shoes or whatever, actually really doesn't have a lot to do with me. But thinking about it, judging her for what she spends, paying any of my life energies attention to how she spends, and getting in a tizzy about it doesn't actually do anything for us. It doesn't actually do anything for us. Now, again, I am not saying that if money is my business in some way because it's being misused, that we are just like, it's cool, do your thing. Like when I see that BP causes a massive oil spill, as they did many years ago, and then they wrote off the costs of cleaning up that oil spill as a tax-deductible business expense and then did not have to pay taxes, that has me go, okay, I'm not shopping with you, BP. I'm not pulling up to your gas station because I see what you did and it's wrong. If a poor person steals, we say something. If a rich person steals, we say something. We say it because it's not morally right to take something that is not ours. So I am not saying that when somebody is misusing money or when it does impact us on a societal level that we're just supposed to be like, whatever. What I'm saying is that ferreting out those places where I might judge someone like a celebrity because of the purses that they buy, it doesn't actually make me feel good to be in that space of judgment. And it says something about how I might approach my own financial abundance. Another thing that I notice, how we approach money is related to how we approach life. I mean, just imagine, I started this podcast by saying, I like money, I want money, I like it when I have more money, stuff like that. But what if I had started this podcast by saying, you know what, I really want joy. I like joy. I love it when I'm more joyful rather than less joyful. I mean, hopefully you'd be like, yeah, Kate, you rock. Go on, sister. So here's the thing. How we approach money is often how we approach life. There is a connection because I'd say 99% of us view, maybe just not the 1%, but 99% of us view money as such a powerful force over our lives that we're going to tend to respond to things in similar ways. So for instance, if you have a tendency to think, oh, well, I can't be too happy around people. I don't want to make them feel bad if they're not as happy as I am. Like, just notice. It's not always a direct correlation, but just notice if there's some kind of a connection between those two things. Is it possible that there's some kind of a connection to those things? Where do you approach money with an attitude of restraint that's based on fear, or making yourself wrong for wanting it, or with an insatiable need for more money? And where is that also evident in other approaches to life? Do you have that same insatiable need for attention? Do you have that same insatiable need for purses? Do you make yourself bad for wanting people's attention? It's like, just ask yourself. It's a worthy investigation. Is it possible that there is a connection? Money is just one channel to offer us gateways to the things that we want in our lives. Money isn't everything, but it's also not nothing. It is one channel. Let's look at the fact that it is there. Let's not assume that because we want, that we are inherently flawed or we need to get our desires under control. Let's not think that we're wrong or bad for having money. Let's instead, I think, release a lot of the exhaustion and the drama that we stir up around thinking we're bad because we have money, to actually do something better for the people who very much need money. I mean, sit with that for a moment. If you remove the drama that you currently feel in your life, whatever that drama may be, and again, we all have drama about money somewhere. We all have something somewhere. If you remove that drama, what does it free up? And at least for me, what I find it frees up is more energy to think about how I can give, because I'm not sitting here in this scarcity space of, oh, I need more money and how am I going to spend money? And I'm going to judge that person over there for how they spend money. Instead, it's like, whew, okay. When my attention isn't there, it goes to, how do I get my bills paid and my needs met? And then who else is in need of something? And how can I help? All right, so it is not bad or wrong to want more money or more joy or more sex or more, right? The stories are where things get upended. And now let's check in and ask, what does wanting more mean for you? What does wanting more mean for you? And is it wanting more of a good thing, or is it, I want more because there's never enough? Notice the energy of that. I want more money because it would be delicious to have more money, or I want more money because I feel like I never have enough. Money is great, but insatiable, unfulfilled, never enough, perpetual, perennial wanting, need more, that is suffering. The trick is knowing the line. And it is kind of tricky. I mean, with everything, sometimes there's a shadow side to something that isn't always immediately apparent. So your craving and your desire to have more money can be delicious in its own way. But then if there's an endless pursuit, that is hollow, that's empty. And knowing what that line is an important thing. Now, one of the things that I have noticed to be really helpful in uncovering, or at least not uncovering, shifting some of my own money stuff, is a practice of getting really present. And I'm going to take a little tip from my wonderful friends over at the Challenge Day organization. They're over at challengeday.org. They have individual and adult workshops and stuff. Love them. And they have this phrase, notice, choose, act. So applied to money, you would notice your money stuff, your stories. You would notice and you would notice and you would notice. You'd probably tap in on a somatic level and notice how you feel, because how you feel in that moment where you're about to pull out your credit card says a lot, right? Like if you really feel like you have to buy something in order to relieve anxiety, it's important that you have the ability to notice that and just get curious about it. And then you choose. You say, okay, what do I want to choose? Here I am standing in line with something I don't really need, pulling out my credit card, really feeling like I need to buy it because I need to relieve anxiety. What am I going to choose? I think I'm going to choose to put down this stuff that I don't need, even though I'm going to feel a little bit ridiculous. And then act. Actually act. Actually put the stuff down and walk out of the store. And by the way, if this is something that you have struggled with, highly recommend actually, in a moment when you are not feeling anxious, going into a store, loading up your cart, and then walking out. And then, if you want to do something karmically to make up for the fact that somebody's going to have to put all that stuff back, maybe just don't get a whole cart. But do something kind for someone. Alleviates it. Go out to the parking lot and collect some carts that have not been put in the cart corral and put them in the cart corral to save someone some work on that end. But in essence, notice, choose, act. Really start bringing attention to your relationship with money and how you interact with money and what's guiding that relationship. There's important work to be done about going, what did your parents teach you about money? But you can also go, how do I actually relate to money? In the Courageous Living Coach certification, which is the coach training program that I'm the director of, we always have a module about money, because it's kind of ridiculous that everybody deals with money every single day on some level, whether you're dealing with not having enough of it or you're dealing with paying for what you have because you do have enough. Everybody deals with money on some level, and yet it's this thing that we often don't talk about. And when I'm talking with the trainees in the Courageous Living Coach certification, our module on money talks about how you are in relationship with your money. And there's this interesting exercise that I got from the folks at Cafe Gratitude, where we actually ask, if money were standing before you right now, and it said, "Am I safety for you?" What would you say? Because if a friend was standing in front of you right now and they said, "Am I safety for you?" You might be like, "Oh, yeah, no." And it would be kind of dysfunctional if you were. But don't we do that with money? And that some of that's societal. Some of that's just the fact of our systemic financial structure, our institutions, the conditioning that we get all the livelong day. Some of it is societal and some of it's conditioning, but nonetheless, we can actually step outside of the conditioning when we get present, when we notice and choose and act, when we decide that we're going to look at things from a slightly different vantage point and then choose the healthiest way of being in right relationship with all things in our lives. And that includes money. Because I think money is so integral to who we are. I have a program, 6-month program. It's a deep dive intensive. It's called the Sovereign Experience. People have trouble spelling the word sovereign, which I totally understand. So if you want to learn more about it, head to yourcourageouslife.com and scroll down and you'll see access to it. And it's a 6-month program that combines group work with intensive one-on-one coaching. And we're really getting to the heart of the stuff that has held people back in their lives for a long time. And we have got to talk about money, because money patterns ricochet through our lives. And by the way, part of the proceeds from Sovereign are going to a number of really, really incredible organizations, because I absolutely believe that one of the things I want to be doing with my money is creating a microeconomy, a little microeconomy that comes out of my business, that employs people to do the work that they love, that gives money to businesses and organizations, and that, yes, also gives back. That is an important part of sovereignty. Helping others to become sovereign in any way that we can as well. Which actually leads me to want to leave this podcast episode with an example of how things can change. It used to be for me that this story I told about money is bad, and people who have money, especially what I deem to be too much, which was really just more my estimation of more than their fair share, were awful people. And in rerouting that belief about money, one of the big things that I've been stepping into is a really sovereign belief that the more money I make, the more money I have to give, and checking myself on that, not actually doing lip service about that. Like, I don't just want it to be like, oh, I'm donating to charity, so it's all good. Like, no, am I really truly setting aside a chunk of what I earn and giving? And am I paying in alignment with my values? And am I making sure that this microeconomy that I'm creating through my business is something that does good on multiple levels? I do not just want it to be, oh, I write a check so I don't have the guilt. I really want it to be like an intense kind of the thought that comes to mind is like, how fabric, it's all interwoven. I want the interweaving. I want to use my life for something. And one of the ways that I can do that is that the time that I'm not sitting at a 9-to-5 job now, because the money for time equation has shifted as my business has grown, means I have time to show up in person in the communities that need service. I have the time to give more away for free, to do the pro bono thing. And of course, I also have the money. And of course, I also have the will to take political action. So these are all pieces of what it means to use your money, which is a privilege to have, for something that is a benefit of the greater good. And I think we all can start thinking now about who we want to be with money. Because if we take this relational approach to money and we go, who do you want to be in relationship to money? I know that who I want to be in relationship to money is I want to use it to become more of who I already am. And I want to use it to help others to become more of who they already are. And I want to use it to diminish suffering. And that's part of how I wake up every day. I want to use my privilege, my resources, my money, whatever I've got, my time, my caring, my empathy, to try to diminish suffering. And when you think about the possibilities that you can create for another human soul on this planet when you generate more money, it really changes the game in terms of how you think about money on a day-to-day basis. Try it out. Try imagining your own microeconomy, money as a force for good, and not just paying that lip service, but it truly being an essence of who you are as a human being. Let me know what you think. All right, that's what I've got on money for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it's gotten you thinking a little bit about what money could be in your life in a relational kind of a way. Today on the podcast, I mentioned a couple of resources. One is the Courageous Living Coach certification, which is at teamclcc.com. I also mentioned the Sovereign Experience, which is at yourcourageouslife.com/sovereign-experience. And you can also find it by heading to yourcourageouslife.com and scrolling down. I mentioned a couple of books, The Courage Habit, which is my book, and also The Art of Money, which is by Barry Tesler, Bartessler. I hope that you will take some time to really look at the relationship of money in your life, the money stories that you hold, the ones you want to rewrite, and get started on that because, hey, it's another day of your life. You got no time to lose. All right, I'll talk to you next time. Later podcast episodes. Planning on one on playing by your own rules. Ooh, and another one on what to do when you hate your job. Everybody could use a little help on that, right? And I'll talk to you next time.